We at the Rouge Rugby wish to extend our condolences to the family and friends of David Robinson. David served as a referee for over 30 years with Rugby Alberta and Rugby Canada, refereeing in over 20 countries, as well as being a sighting commissioner for World Rugby and Major League Rugby. He shall be missed. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast. I'm Stu Hardy, joined as always by Derek Brissett. Derek, we've just had the second round of the pool stages in the Rugby World Cup. You know, great things to talk about with Canada's game against Italy. But did you watch any of the other games happening this weekend?
Yeah, dove into it a little bit. Obviously, man, the Rugby World Cup has obviously been outstanding. That Fiji South Africa game, unreal. That was unreal. Your Wales, what a highlight reel that they put on. Unfortunately, on the wrong side of the highlight reel. But there's a lot of highlights from that game that you can watch. I know you slept through it because you had to like prep for a race or something, but just be known that you didn't miss much other than a lot of really nice Black Ferns tries. Speaking of really nice tries too, Mateo Carreras from Newcastle with like arguably one of the best tries of the season.
Definitely the best try. Has been on a few social media channels making the rounds.
Yeah, exactly. I've watched that try like 50 times. I don't understand the acceleration that he has at the like halfway line. Like he doesn't look like he's like, the video's weird because it's like he's running side by side with a player and just like takes off and something. Like I don't know if it's just like the angle, but it looks like he hit like a Super Mario mushroom or something and just took off. So that was an unreal try. So I mean, like, yeah, there's some the Saracens won, so I'm always happy about that too, despite surviving a huge comeback from the last place team in the league, guys. It's that we can maybe play a little bit better than that. But also, like, I mean, so you're mentioning that it's like, yeah, it was a great week for rugby, also a bit of a sad week for rugby, and rest in peace, Wasps.
Yeah, it seems so. Wasps have gone into administration, similar to the Worcester Warriors. This was always something that had high potential for happening. This seems to have been caused not only by COVID payments just taking a bit longer for people to get back in the stands and somewhat, but it's also in part due to the Wasps' move from High Wycombe to Coventry and the loan repayment they had to do for that. And yeah, it's really sad. And I think at least for English or Premiership rugby, I should say, there should now be a focus on how do you ensure the long-term durability not only of these teams but as the league itself, because now you have teams like Leicester Tigers who are going multiple weeks now without any home games because their home games were against Worcester and Wasps. And now,
I was gonna say, yeah, the Tigers had the wild schedule, right? Where like they're like barely playing for the next month now.
To me, what I think they should do on those days is just have a rugby skirmish and have like a possibles versus probables.
I saw game. What team announced that they were going to play the Barbarians instead?
That was Northampton Saints.
Northampton. See, like it's one of those things where it's like, okay, like that's cool, especially if that's was supposed to be a Northampton home game, right? So that's probably a good way to like, sell some tickets and maybe, I guess save some of the clubs like a little bit, like get back some of that home game revenue that they could have made if they were playing the Warriors or the Wasps. But I'm also kind of like, from like, I guess like a tactical actual rugby standpoint, I'm not sure, like, do you want to risk your guys getting injured playing the Barbarians in the middle of the Premiership season? Like, so it's like, I don't know, it's a bit of a like maybe a double-edged sword there or whatever. I'm not really sure what the best outcome is, but
So let me just have a quick check because this was only announced on Friday, and so it appears that that game will be on Saturday, the 26th of November. So this basically, I think that means it falls within the international window, or if not, I think it's probably just after. It may be like the
yeah,
last week in November, so it's just outside the international window. So if this was a game around then, you got to be thinking that a lot of the international players won't be available because they'll have just finished playing those international
yeah,
games. I think England are actually playing a game that Saturday as well.
yeah. But
I can't remember, but so what I think it probably will be like the Barbarians playing, but it will be a lot of the guys that are in, say, the Premiership Cup, for example.
yeah, but
It's not the first team. It's
you still
the
wouldn't want those
those.
guys getting hurt playing like an exhibition game in the middle of the season either.
Well, you can argue that if this had been Worcester or Wasp, I'm not entirely sure which team they say they're replacing.
Yeah,
Sorry, yeah, Worcester. So it would have probably been a first ranked team, or as first ranked team as you can get,
yeah,
going up against what would have been Worcester Warriors. So then you can argue, well, you'd be playing these guys anyway, and you'd be playing top
well,
level rugby. So the risk of injury is probably greater.
it's like,
Or nah,
I mean, obviously, if like you had to actually play the game or whatever,
yeah,
you would obviously play the game.
yeah,
Right? But it's like I would imagine like a team early in the season, if you have, if it's like say like okay, you have the Wasps in like November, like then maybe you're like, oh yeah, let's bring in the Barbarians or something. But it's like if you have like the Wasp or the Warriors on like the second last week of the season, going into like the postseason or whatever,
oh yeah, you
or you got
wouldn't
a
do it.
Champions Cup match the next week
No,
on
no,
what team
you
it is.
wouldn't.
Like
But
you
that's the
don't
thing.
want to fill
That's the
that
thing.
gap
This
with an
is
exhibition
the
game.
last week of
Yeah,
November, so
yeah, you're not feeling.
that's okay.
I don't think teams are going to be. It's weird. It's going to be
Yeah,
weird
they're
to
not
see
going
if
to
they're.
be breaking their backs to try and
Yeah,
get like a. There's not like, oh, we'll have Georgia come in and
yeah,
play.
no,
It's
it's gonna.
only within like the certain windows that are allowed. So in
It'll
this
be.
case, it would be the autumn games.
Yeah,
Maybe when it comes to the Six Nations, if there were any games in the Premiership that would have had Worcester or Wasps
yeah,
playing then. But I think it's just because it falls within a manageable window
yeah. Like I mean,
for
if you're in
the
front
Saints,
of
the
that,
host, that it makes sense to have it.
I was just gonna say. I think like ultimately, it's like you just gotta kind of feel bad for the players, the staff, and all the fans and stuff of the
Yeah,
team.
something like over
Nobody.
160 redundancies
Yeah,
happened
like
as a
well,
result.
yeah, especially from the job point of view, like nobody wants to see that. I mean, there's obviously a lot of people that work for the team, like even just on the business side, that don't necessarily have an impact on the rugby team on the pitch, but like sell tickets or do marketing or whatever. So like that stings, and obviously, like I mean, from a fan point of view too, like it's like you never want to see teams relocate and stuff. And I mean, no matter how much trouble teams are in financially and stuff, there's always the group of diehard fans that you really feel bad for and stuff. And it's like at least the Wasps weren't like the Warriors where they had the owner come in and bash the fans for being part of the reason here. So
Yeah,
which was just terrible. Which I mean definitely wins you over nobody in doing that. But hopefully the Premiership can kind of get that sorted out soon because it does
yeah.
suck,
Well,
especially midway through the season. It's even
yeah.
worse.
Right. Okay, let's turn to the main focus, the big rugby competition happening, which is the Rugby World Cup. And as we said at the start of the show, it was the second round, and it was Canada versus Italy, the two highest ranked teams within Pool B, going against each other. Yeah, it didn't start off great. Absolutely not. Italy were able to recover the ball, dodge tacklers, and get the first try of the match within 30 seconds. So
Yep.
yeah, not too thrilled about that bit.
No, that wasn't the. You could start a game better.
Yes,
There's
yes,
better
you
ways to
can.
start games. Yeah.
For example, when Canada played Japan and
Uh,
they scored within the first 60
other
seconds,
like I mean,
that was
realistically,
okay. That was okay.
this game's kind of funny because it's like it started really bad. You can kind of argue that it ended pretty bad, but everything in between, like there's 78 minutes in
Yeah,
between that Canada's really good.
Yeah.
But it's like
So
first, we have to just ignore the first minute and the 79th minute. We're good.
yeah, but yeah.
But
So yeah, apart from those few minutes, everything was pretty good. Well, I say pretty good. There were a few issues, especially when it came to things like tackling.
yeah,
There was a lot of missed tackles from, admittedly, from both sides, but obviously we're focusing on Canada. You know, we focus on real Canadian rugby, so we should. Um, but as expected, when you're facing the two highest ranked teams of any pool game, it is an absolute gladiator battle going on out there. Um, and you know, neither side wanted to like concede anything, and their defense was both equally talented in breakdown steals, in getting forcing players to knock the ball on. There was a plethora of scrums coming through. You know, and there were scrum penalties as well for wheeling the scrum multiple times. However, sure enough, by the time you get to 19th minute, Paige Farries has come in off the wing. She's spotted a gap. She's through. She's under the post. And Miller is able to get a very easy conversion, and Canada take the lead. Now we follow up. We're getting to the end of the half, and there's a line out within Italy's 22. Canada have the ball. Who else is it going to go to as we march towards the line? But it is Totosi dotting the ball down, her fourth of the tournament at this point. And then, so yeah, go to the break, and it is Canada 12 to Italy 5. Then, so start the second half. You know, the opening 10 minutes, you know, a bit of argy bargy, a little bit of like back and forth play. Canada getting towards the line once again, you know, and, you know, we've had a few attempts at like the pick and go, a few penalties in which even Captain Sophie de Goody was trying to take quickly to get over underneath the post. It just wasn't working out. So pass wide, and it's Calajuvi, who's just been having a fantastic tournament so far, able to get her first try of the tournament as well. And then a few moments later, you know, it feels a bit like deja vu. It's a line out in Italy's 22. Canada get the ball, and ball's going back. And who else but Totosi? Totosi is now the leading try scorer in the Rugby World Cup.
well, she's tied with Portia Woodman.
Oh yeah. So
who?
So when the game happened,
yeah,
Totosi was the leading
when the
try
game
scorer.
happened, yes, and then the Black Ferns got to play Wales, and Portia Woodman promptly kind of, I guess, retook a tie of that lead. Two players that score tries very differently, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. But but you know, 5 tries in 2 games, nothing to shy about. Unfortunately, when it was Totosi's first try, Miller's conversion attempt hit the crossbar, bounced back, so nothing there. Calajuvi's was unsuccessful conversion as well, and Sophie de Goody was unable to get the conversion from Totosi's try. Then comes the interesting part, because this is something I want to talk about, is that in the 66th minute, Emma Taylor goes for a tackle, bit late, and because she's much taller than the player she's tackling, gets identified, and the referee says it's shoulder to shoulder, but then because of momentum, it's contact with the head, and Emma Taylor is shown a yellow card with about 14 to 15 minutes left to play of the game. So you expect that, oh, okay, 76th minute, when that comes around, the ball will get out, and Taylor will come back on. Canada will be back to full complement. But Italy take the ball quickly from every penalty they get. As a result, Taylor can't come back onto the field. So what should be 10 minutes now extends further and further until you get to the 79th minute. And this is when Italy finally get the break, finally go over the line, and Captain Giordano gets the ball down as a final consolation try for the Azzurri. For Solari, much easier conversion as well. It's right next to the post, but it is, you know, a bit too little too late as the final whistle goes, And even with Canada down to only 14 players, they take the crucial victory and the bonus point as they finish the game 22 to Italy's 12. This puts Canada on 10 match points. And as a result, they are now guaranteed a spot in the quarterfinals. What ranking they will be, we have yet to see. As we've mentioned previously, when it comes to this World Cup, it will be decided on a ranking system. But interestingly, the Black Ferns have 10 points because they've had a bonus point from their game against Australia and Wales. Canada have bonus points from the games against Italy and Japan. England only has one bonus point because they were unable to get it against France. So at this moment in time, Canada is ranked second and England are ranked third. So that will be a very interesting quarterfinal placement if those rankings remain the same after the third round, which is coming up this weekend.
Yeah, and that's going to be a big game too. Obviously, the USA, so that's a big rivalry. And I mean, I know the USA hasn't. I mean, they lost to Italy. They didn't really play well against Japan either, especially in the first half. That was bad.
Yeah, that was disappointing. Yeah. But then it was a case of
they picked it up. But it's like I was honest. I guess a little side tangent. I mean, they picked it up in the second half, but some of the decisions they made to like kick for points instead of going for tries at certain parts of that game, kind of, it's almost like there's a little lack of confidence there.
It's
little side tangent on
the
USA, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think like for Canada in this game, there's a few things jump out. So I was like, there was obviously the first try sucked.
Yeah.
The first try against that was real bad. Obviously, just a lot of like missed tackles, really. Like nothing like overly crazy. Unfortunately, that kind of seemed to be like a trend that really kept going through like the rest of the first half. Like if you kind of look at like the World Rugby stats or the rug that are on like the World Cup website or whatever, it's like, I mean, like the meters carried for Italy is 525 to Canada's 389, despite the fact that Canada had like 60 more carries. With the ball, right? 60 more carries. And I mean, we can take into account the possession numbers and stuff too. Like Italy really didn't have the ball very often. But, it's just like you have certain players like Beatrice Rigoni that apparently wore a force field during this game. And you couldn't tackle her. And they had a few of those like big, like just really big line breaks from like a missed tackle or two. I was gonna say like but I think like ultimately I'm like, I don't know, like that's really the only complaint that I think I have, and it's not even that big of a complaint, right? Like you have like there's some missed tackles, right? Almost every try that's not scored from like 2 feet out is a missed tackle. Somebody had to miss a tackle somewhere to score a try. But like I think ultimately though, it's like you kind of look at it. So looking at the stats, right? So again, World Rugby stats kind of has that Canada made 70% of their tackles.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's a really bad number, right?
Yeah.
But if you kind of break it down into the halves, like the first half, they were in like the 70% range for their missed tackles, right? But like in the second half, they got back up to like 88%, basically, like 87, 88%, which is good. I mean, ideally you want that to be a little closer to 90, but like, 87%. Like, so like the second half, like they cleaned up those missed tackles a lot.
Yeah.
Right? It's like they didn't necessarily clean it up enough to like make the stat number balance out a little bit more, but like they cleaned it up a lot in the second half. There's obviously some handling errors and stuff, which, we talked about that last week, but I think the thing is, though, it's like despite these mistakes that were made and like the missed tackles obviously led to tries, especially that first one. Despite those mistakes, like we said, it's like Italy scored a try in the first minute and they scored a try in the last minute with Taylor in the bin. So they didn't right. The other 78 minutes of this game, Canada dominated it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like it's like, you know what I mean? Like, you take out that other seven, like, with the exception of the first and last minute of this game, so 78 minutes of this game, it's 22-0 Canada.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, which, like, is obviously good. Like, they dominated possession. They dominated possession, territory, right? The pack, like, Italy's pack looked like they didn't belong on the field.
Yeah.
With, especially at the set piece, basically, right? Like, I mean, we talk about the line out and being like, yeah, Totosi had another 2 tries. They, like, the Maul is destroying teams.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're the USA, like, I don't, like, you honestly look at this and be like, you can't give up a penalty within, like, you can't give up a penalty like within, like, in your own half, because that's going to be a 5-meter ball, right? And it's like you're probably giving up a try at that point. You know, so it's like, you know, the Maul's killer. The scrum is killing teams. The one thing too, like, even with the Maul, which is kind of scary, when I was for Cal Juvi's try, when I was watching this live, right, and Italy gets the penalty, in my head, I was like, go for, like, kick for the line out, because the Maul is just dominant.
Yeah.
Right. Canada didn't do that. They quick tapped. And when I was watching it immediately, I was like, I don't know, like, I was initially thinking, like, oh, why are you quick tapping? Like, your Maul is dominant. Like, just kick it to the touch line and then roll your Maul over, because you haven't seen a team in this tournament that can stop it yet. And then they played that and they just scored a try off the quick tap anyways. And I was like, oh, okay. So, like, that's the spot that you're in. It's like you can score in tries from everywhere. Right. Paige Ferris obviously had a really nice run and stuff too.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, she had a great try. Cal Juvie had a great try. Totosi's tries are like the hard-working tries and the big team tries. But, like, there's showing that there's a little bit of showing a bit of an ability to score tries multiple different ways, right? And with some more players, obviously, too, like Paige Ferris and Cal Juvie, the back's getting a little bit more involved in this game as well. I thought both Ferries and Cal Juvie have had unreal games. Cal Juvie's been one of Canada's best players for the first 2 games too. So nice to kind of see her get rewarded for that. I think this is the best game I've seen Paige Ferries play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
right. Like,
that was I mean, we'll be talking about this when we go over the laws of the game, but her tackle, you could hear the hanging silence from the contact until you heard the crowd react.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, like that hit was huge. And I think, like, that's almost, that hit to me too was almost like at least, like, in my opinion, or like watching, like, you could watch how, like, the other Canadian players react to that. And it's like they, like, especially immediate, because that was toward the end of the first half. Right. And it's like there were some moments of kind of struggling in the first half, especially, like, we talked about the missed tackle thing. Right. And I think like that was such a big hit too. You can kind of see the energy that gave the team. And they were way better defensively after that too. Like, a lot of the tackle. I would love to see, like, the stat of, like, how many, like, with the tackle percentage after that Paige Ferries hit, because they looked a lot better and a lot tighter defensively after that. Ferries made another huge tackle too after, I can't remember which Italian player it was, but there was a really big line break and she kind of chased down the player and tackled her around, like, the 22-ish, which looked to save a potential try there. So, like, she was great in this game, lots of big hits and stuff, and then was also really involved, like, in the ruck and stuff. She came off her wing looking for work a lot, which was great to see too. Yeah, and Cal Juvie, a lot of the same thing. Like, I think you know, she's done really well defensively, tackles, breakdowns, everything. Like I said, nice to see her get rewarded. So is this where we segue to talking about the greatest player in the world, or?
Yeah, I think we
Again,
can talk about them. Yeah.
Are you gonna say it, or you want
No, I think that you led that so well. You should continue.
Do it. Okay, yeah. So Sophie de Goody's the best rugby player on the planet. This is a hill I am willing to die on for anybody that disagrees. Yeah, just another absolutely dominant performance.
Yeah, 16 carries across the gain line, the most of any player from both teams in this game. Like I said before, when it came to the Sarah Calajuvi try. She was tapping the ball, ready to go and deliver the try herself. Obviously, unsuccessfully, but kept the ball live for Canada, kept it going. Um, yeah, that no, she's one of a kind. There's no one like her.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, and just unreal too. She's got like almost she's got 9 more carries than anybody else in the tournament too. She's picking up the meters with it. In like the build up to like Ferry's try too, like she was like got every like second carry basically.
Yeah,
Like the offense kind of really runs like sort of runs through her being off of that like that sort of first receiver type thing and right. And I think as well too, like the line, like we're talking about the Tatosi tries, obviously, right? And
yeah,
part of that though is that those tries are from lineouts,
yeah,
right? Like most or all of them are off lineouts, right? And part of
mm,
that lineout, and I mean, I'm saying this, I'm not 100% sure if DeGoody actually got the ball on both of the tries. Now that I'm actually thinking about it, but like she's been dominant in the lineout too. And like part of that is why, like, yeah, the mauls worked because like that line, the first part of getting that maul to work is you have to connect on the line out, and DeGoody's been unreal. And Tatosi's seems to find their steady hands like quite often, and
yeah,
like that's been working out. And obviously, like a huge, a huge effort defensively all the time. The tackles being around the breakdown, just like just kind of like a constant just like constantly the best player on the pitch, like no matter what team they're playing. I know I tweeted like early in the game, be like, yeah, I think after that tackle, the chase down tackle is like, just give Paige Ferries the player of the match right now.
yeah,
And and it's like as you kind of keep watching the game, it's like realistically, like I know I said that because I was like, Ferries I thought was standing out because it's one of the best games I think I've seen her play. Um, but it's also at the same time, it's like Sophie DeGoody should be the player of the match at every single game she plays.
yeah,
Right. And as like I was listening to like a hockey podcast earlier, and they were kind of talking about how like, players like Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid, if their teams lose, they kind of stand out just because like their standard, like the bar that they've set for their performance is like dominating a game.
yeah,
Right. And I feel like, Sophie DeGoody is almost like in that kind of echelon of like
yeah,
like she should be the player of the match in every game. Like she should have got player of the match in the game against Japan too, or whatever.
yeah,
But like Tatosi gets 3 tries, so that's obviously who you give it to. But it's like it's one of those things where it's like she just seems to dominate every single game that she's in, and she's the best player on the pitch no matter what. So looking forward to seeing that continue during this tournament. Looking forward to seeing it definitely continue against the USA next week and then through the tournament as a whole. And
hmm
man, yeah, it's just a treat to watch right now. And I mean, how many forwards take touchline kicks at goal too? Like it's
exactly. Unfortunately, it was announced just prior to the kickoff of this game on the TSM broadcast that Taylor Perry has suffered a knee injury and her World Cup has come to an end. She will remain with the team in New Zealand until the conclusion of Canada's involvement in the tournament. Um, no, heartbreaking for her, understandably, considering everything of like this tournament being delayed and then finally being able to go over there only to suffer this injury. We wish Taylor swiftest of recoveries, and we hope to see her in the red and white of Canada not too long. So yeah, we were talking about that last week because Perry was scheduled to start and that was quickly pulled, and unfortunately, it's this is the result. So yeah, sorry to put a bit of a downer on that, but hopefully Perry can help inspire the her teammates and hopefully continue the good strong morale that seems to be happening with the Canadian team and hopefully sees them all the way through to the finals. Right, let's rip the band-aid off because we need to talk about some of these other results as well. Now, I had I don't know whether the pleasure or displeasure of watching Scotland Australia because
whew, that was a
or what I should say is I had the pleasure of watching Scotland lead for I think it was like the first 75, 76 minutes, and then
yeah.
only to even with Australia having two red cards and going into overtime, Scotland with possession, they just couldn't get it done. And the final score,
Shame.
Scotland 12, Australia 14. Yeah, Scotland pick up a losing bonus point like they did last week, but this is pretty much them out of the tournament because who are they facing next week? New Zealand. And we'll get onto their results later. The other clash of Pool B, the USA versus Japan, as we said, not a great start at all for the USA.
Losing at halftime too.
Halftime 5-7 behind. Although the final score they were able to turn it on in the second half. The final score USA 30, Japan 17. Now came the clash of two of the top teams in the tournament, and one that I'm sure a lot of fans around the world were eager to watch. France versus England, very tense game. Defensively driven, as you can tell by the score. The final score, France 7, England 13. England continuing their unbeaten winning run. Then we move on to Wales, New Zealand.
I mean,
the halftime score wasn't great anyway, but
yeah. Did you end up watching it after? I know you had to prepare for like a marathon or something.
Yeah, so I was running in the Toronto Waterfront Marathon on the Sunday when this game was being held. I say marathon, which is 42 kilometers. I was only running 5 of them, but
so you missed out on the other. Oh man,
yeah, I think I made the right decision of getting a good night's sleep instead of staying awake and watching this. I mean, I kind of knew the result already. One's a professional outfit that has won the World Cup multiple times, and the other's Wales.
Yeah.
So final score, Wales 12, New Zealand 56. It's not the worst score from the tournament so far. I mean, England have absolutely bodied Fiji in their opening game. So I'm okay with that. And speaking of Fiji, we had the final game of the weekend, Fiji versus South Africa, two of the lowest ranked teams in the tournament. And this was the back and forth
games of the tournament.
Exactly. So Fiji actually had 2 potential tries disqualified because of forward passes or accidental knock-ons and stuff. Yeah. But so South Africa was leading by 3 points right up until the final minutes where Fiji get the ball over, not only getting the try and the conversion, but getting their first win in World Cup history, in the Women's World Cup at least. Fiji 21, South Africa 17.
Yeah, South Africa kind of got sucked into playing Fiji's style, which
that's a recipe for disaster.
It's a recipe for disaster, but realistically, the world would be a better place if everyone played rugby like Fiji.
Yeah, well, I mean, Fijiana proved at the Sevens in 2021 that they've come distances and played, and we've seen how 7 styles has affected the men's 15s team, and now it's clearly having benefits with the women's 15s team as well. So, yeah, congratulations, Fiji. Probably going to finish 3rd in the pool. I mean, there are tough hitters coming up of France and England, respectively, for both those teams. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. But coming this weekend, it will be Italy, not Italy. Italy will be playing Japan, I think, first. But then after that, it will be Canada versus the USA. And that will be on TSN at 10:15 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, October the 22nd. Right. So we talked about things like tackles, and I think we need to bring back the laws of the game when we're talking about tackling in rugby, because it can kind of feel weird, because sometimes you can hear the referee shouting tackle, or you can hear them shouting like ruck and stuff like that. So this is to determine what a tackle actually is, which may seem obvious to you and me, Derek, but some people, it can be pretty confusing. So
hey, I mean, the NFL still doesn't know what a catch is, so I mean, it's hard to really understand. So this is coming from an abridged version of the World Rugby
law book, which you can find on World Rugby's website. But a tackle can take place anywhere in the field of play. So, between the sidelines and between the end lines. The actions of players involved in the tackle must ensure a fair contest and allow the ball to be available for play immediately. So for a tackle to occur, you have the ball carrier and the tackler. And so the tackler will go in, the ball carrier will have to be held by the tackler and then brought to ground by the tackler, possibly some other opposition players. But there's at least one tackler and there's at least one ball carrier. So being held means that a tackler must continue holding the ball carrier until the ball carrier is on the ground or is gone to ground, as it's known. So if a tackler goes in and, arms go around, but they don't get a grip, they just fall down, the player can carry on running. That's not a tackle, so play can continue. Now, being brought to ground, that means obviously the player has come down, but by the very least, it means that at least one knee is on the ground as well. So you've seen in the game of Canada against Italy that players would be tackled by the tackler, and you have a few other players coming in, and then you'd see the ball carrier get dropped to their knees. So they're still in their body, they're upright, but their knees are on the ground. You hear the referee shout tackle, and that is an alert to all the players that the tackle has now happened. So a tackler, also something to mention, because someone asked about the Paige Farry's tackle, is that a tackler must not raise the ball carrier's legs above their hips. So this is known as going over the horizontal. So once your legs go over the hips, you're basically going into a dangerous position. It is also the tackler's responsibility to bring the ball carrier down safely. You can't just tackle them and then when they're lifted up, let go. You have to bring them to ground. It's been loads of instances where bad tackle has happened, and as a result, the tackler has been red carded. Penalties have occurred as a result. So it's very important that the tackler brings the ball carrier down safely, doesn't put their legs past the horizontal. And that's why Paige Farry's tackle was perfectly fine, was because even though it was a strong hit, she didn't take the player past the horizontal. She didn't lift the legs above the hips. So it was all perfectly okay. So once the ball carrier is brought to ground, the tackler must release their hold, and failure to do so results in a penalty. You'll sometimes see the referee give a penalty and then do an action where it's the arms across the chest and then opening them out. That is a sign of tackler not releasing. And but likewise, it's not just the tackler. The ball carrier must make the ball available. This can either be passed to a teammate, so it can be an offload on the floor, or it can be just pushing the ball back as the tackle then becomes a ruck. Ruck we'll talk about next time, but don't worry about that. All they have to do is make the ball available. So now in the Canada-Italy game, there was an instance where a Canadian player was tackled, they went to ground, and then they rolled over and then put the ball back, but the referee gave a penalty to Italy. And the reason for that is because the ball wasn't made available, and they moved with the ball on the ground. That is known as a double movement as well. It's double movements are mainly called out when it comes to scoring tries. So if the ball carrier is brought to ground, they have to make the ball available. They can't continue playing the ball. So in that instance, they're penalized. And yeah, that is the basics of tackles in rugby. And as I said, next week we'll be talking about rucks and possibly any other rules that come up that have been flagged during the game.
Yeah, I was going to say, though, the thing like with that Holt camp penalty that she did get called for with the extra roll, it's like you can get up if you've been tackled. You just have to release the ball, pick the ball back up again, and then keep going. So it's kind of
well, technically, once you let go of the ball,
yeah,
the tackle phase has been completed because you've made the ball available.
Exactly. So you can
you've made the ball available to yourself. but
like
the idea is potentially that an Italian in Canada or Italy's case, if a Canadian player had done that, had let go of the ball and then picked it up immediately, as soon as that ball's released, an Italian player could have come in, could have picked that up. Obviously,
I just think like because you can do that, sometimes players try it, but it just doesn't work out, and you end up kind of getting called for it. You're always trying to get that extra meter.
You got to just find the edge just clearly. And most importantly, the referee has to see it.
Here's what I wanted to ask you, because I don't even know the answer to this question.
All right.
What's a missed tackle? Like, what actually qualifies as a missed tackle? Because
I think we'll have to have a chat with James Dealey because he's the stats guy. But,
so
I don't know. I think a missed tackle
from the actual statistic point of view, like what determines a missed tackle?
I say a missed tackle is when a tackler begins but doesn't complete the tackle. So they fail to bring the ball carrier to ground. That is a missed tackle.
Okay, so you have to actually make contact with the person.
I would say
if you lunge at them and completely miss, is that a missed tackle?
No, I think you have to make contact.
See, this is because that's like I was genuinely wondering this because like I know in hockey, for example, there's a statistic that's hits, which is kept track of by like off-ice officials and stuff watching the game.
Yes.
Right. But in hockey, notoriously, there are certain arenas, in like at the very least in the NHL, whose off-ice officials are a little bit more or less lenient on what they consider a hit. Right. So that's why I was kind of like, is it like and even like baseball has errors, which is basically like somebody being like, you should have caught that. Right. And it's like, as a tackle, like as a missed tackle, does that come down to like, is that just somebody's like opinion of like, you should have made that tackle and it's a missed tackle or like, but that's what I'm saying. Like, is there like, if you're saying there's got to be contact, so it's like, should somebody have made that tackle? But it's like, oh, but you were out of position, so you couldn't have made that tackle. But it's still a mistake, but it's maybe not a missed tackle. Like, what's the actual
contact? Because I think if it was a case of, a player goes through a clear gap, the two players in either side of that gap can't get to them, but one of them lunges and is nowhere near that player.
Yeah.
Like that's not a missed tackle. That's just a vain attempt at a tackle.
So you have to actually, like make contact or something.
Yeah, I believe it is, but again, I think it's very the interpretation of what a missed tackle is varies.
See, because what I'm looking at, which I think is funny and or interesting, right, is there's a defenders beaten stat as well on the site, right? So Italy has 24 defenders beaten, right? And Canada has 24 missed tackles, whereas Italy has 19 missed tackles, which matches Canada's 19 defenders beaten. So is that all it is? It's like you have to, but like you can beat a defender without that defender making contact with you too, right? So that's why
possibly. And again, they don't explain how they find these stats. So we're just speculating.
I was gonna say this follows our Rouge Rugby tradition of like not actually doing research before recording this.
Hey, we do our research when it matters.
I just genuinely don't know. Like I haven't actually. I kind of kid. I did like kind of look around, but I haven't actually found like an answer of like what it like the actual definition. I'm just curious what the actual definition is. Like, I mean. Because I don't know. I always kind of want to like learn stuff. I wonder how that stat's actually kind of tracked because it's just like if you're out of position, because that's what I mean. Like if you're out of position, right, you can theoretically say that player beat you. So that could be a defender beaten if you're just like slightly out of position.
Yeah.
But an attempted tackle. I don't know. Either way. I don't know.
All right.
Always learning. It's a complicated law book. I'm just curious.
Certainly is. All right. So we're going to move away from New Zealand. We're going to bring it back to North America as we're going to be talking about some MLR news, most importantly, the Toronto Arrows. Now, this is the issue because last week we recorded on the Tuesday after Canadian Thanksgiving. So we had more signing news. But this time around, we only have the one piece of news to tell you about Arrow's signings and re-signings, because we're recording on the Monday again, which means by the time this goes out, another signing would have probably happened. And that is that Kobe Faust has re-signed for 2023. So in the press release, he says that 2022 curtailed by injuries. But he was able to get not only a full 80 minutes, but his first start for the Arrows in the final game of the season against Old Glory DC. 6'1", 220 pound. He's already had 139 carry meters, 13 carries, 14 ruck arrivals, 6 tackles, and 2 tackle breaks, and that's only from 4 matches.
Yeah.
So let's see what happens when he gets a full season under his belt.
I really like Kobe Faust. That's he seems to be like one of those promising young Canadian players. So excited to see him back for the upcoming season.
Yeah, it should be really good to see. Now there's this article on our friends America Rugby News website titled "Big Decisions Looming for Major League Rugby." And it's talking about the MLR owners, and that includes the owners of all the teams within MLR, have to make big decisions on the competition's future. After a month of speculation, multiple sources have confirmed that the immediate fate of 2 existing franchises should be determined, along with the potential of a new addition. So MLR fans are aware of this, but for those who are new to rugby and new to the MLR, the Austin Gilgronis and the LA Giltinis were disqualified from the 2022 MLR postseason and championship series. There are the results of irregularities found by the due diligence of a potential Austin sale and subsequent actions by then team owner Adam Gilchrist. The article says it was deemed that Austin was likely in breach of the salary cap, though MLR were denied the opportunity to complete a full investigation, and LA were pulled after Gilchrist was determined to have violated the owner's participation agreement. Since that decision by MLR, Gilchrist's fortunes have plummeted with the near collapse of F45's value on the stock exchange. He has since been removed as CEO of the gym franchise. Appears to have just gone radio silent. The last bit of news is that he sold 2 of his multi-million-dollar houses in Sydney. So, and there have been rumors of a potential sale of Austin. They've been around since spring, along with allegations that the team's staff have been left unpaid for a large part of the 2022 season. There has been outside interest in LA, but there's been nothing finalized for either team. For potential new entries, it is looking that Chicago has the strongest bid that remains on the table. And it will be that the owners will decide what the outcomes for each situation will be. That is the fate of Austin, the fate of LA, and the future of potentially Chicago. But, times are ticking. Now, this is what we're going to do now is what we love to do, which is wildly speculate.
Well, that's the thing, though, because, is like this meeting, the way this article is worded, is that this meeting, like the meeting, has already happened. We're recording this on Monday. So this could be fun because by the time I actually get this edited and put out, we might actually already know the outcome of all of this.
So if you hear a sudden stop after the Kobe Faust announcement, that's the reason why.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. There's been lots of rumors circulating. If you go even onto the MLR subreddit, it is, lots of hearsay, a lot of rumors coming from different people regarding the fate of different teams. So we've had one rumor that's come out today is that LA and Austin will be replaced with the team from Chicago, and that'll be an expansion and a dispersal draft for the remaining guild players. That seems to contradict information that's happening with Tradewire. So back in Let's see. I did have this up, and now I just refresh the page and it's gone. Apologies.
Well,
So yeah, back in August 24th, Nola Gold received salary cap considerations for 2023 from Austin in exchange for Austin receiving the playing services rights to Christian Alvarez. So it
I
seemed at
mean,
one point that
it's
Austin was in a position to
well,
continue with the team next year,
I
but
mean, as we've seen with the Premiership, like two teams that have been well, I don't want to say kicked out of the league, but two teams that are no longer in the league were literally playing games in the season that they're no longer in the league. So, I
yeah,
mean, it's entirely possible that somebody at Austin and somebody at LA who have been making trades have been operating under the hope at the very least that they could be back. Um,
yeah,
but I think, like you said, though, it's like there's obviously a lot of a few rumors and stuff that are kind of gaining some steam, and
yeah. I mean,
it'll be
another
interesting
rumor
to see what
is
happens.
yeah, another rumor is that the LA team is going to be purchased by a UK led group.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
saw that one too.
well-known figures associated with Premiership Rugby being involved. Again, these are
Yeah,
all rumors. Nothing substantial has come from
I
this
don't
at
really
the time of
understand why
recording.
Premiership Rugby would be involved in an LA team when they can't get their own house in order.
Well, I
Um,
think it's just certain figures within
yeah, I don't
the team.
like I said, it's all like who knows
Yeah,
what's going
I,
to happen.
I think the
I
ideal
mean,
situation that I would honestly prefer to see is I want Austin to remain, I want LA to
yeah.
remain, and I'd like to see Chicago added. I understand that now, with it being mid-October, it's going to be much harder to
See, it's
achieve.
weird because it's like I think my opinion, like I think ideally you would like you never want to see franchises fold
No,
or be gone
leave.
or leave in any shape or form. Even like the Raptors thing, like I mean, I still don't agree with what they did, but like you don't want to see teams leaving or folding. Um, so I mean, like ideally, yes, you would obviously want to keep. I mean, it's very clear that you need a different owner. That's very clear.
Yeah,
But like, yeah, I would like ideally if there's a way to keep a franchise in Austin, a franchise in LA, I think that's ideally what you want. I think though, like if both of them stay, I do think it's too late to add an expansion team. I
yeah.
think I
I
think
think
you
in that
want oh
circumstance, it would
yeah,
be you announce a team is joining, and but for this case, it would be joining in 2024.
yeah.
So give them a
Yeah,
year
like
to maybe play
but I think that's what it
exhibition
should be.
games.
I think any expansion teams should be like give them like a year run up where you can like like spread out some announcements and stuff like you can like do like the cool like somewhere down the line be like all right here's our logo, okay, here's our kit, here's the first player that we're signing, here's
Yeah,
first player we're drafting, and you can kind of like this is the stadium we're playing at, play like a little maybe even a little exhibition game or something.
yeah,
um but like you to kind of have that build up. If one of or both of Austin and LA are gone, then I would understand maybe a little bit more of the urgency to maybe get a replacement team.
yeah. Keep it
Um,
at an
but
even 12.
yeah,
You
regardless
want.
of which
Yeah,
city that ends up being, I would see
yeah. And
that a little bit
if
more.
that is the case,
But
then having a dispersal draft of the players remaining with Austin and LA, most of them probably will end
well,
up going to Chicago.
and I think like that's the other thing. Like I mean, again, we're like waiting, we're like anxiously kind of waiting on what's going to happen. And I mean, by the time people are listening to this, perhaps we know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
Um, but like the idea of a dispersal draft with the rosters of Austin and LA is very fascinating. To see kind of like how that would work because like I mean, even if just for the sake of argument, you did it in the same order as the collegiate draft and stuff, like that could give some of the teams that say miss the playoffs, like franchise changing players, because those
yeah,
teams like Austin was. I mean, obviously, like LA was the champion 2 years ago, and a lot of their roster is still there. Austin was one of the best teams in the Western Conference this year alongside LA, right? So it's like you have the teams that finished 1-2 in the Western Conference standings are gonna have, and we could have a draft with all of those players. Like that's actually kind of a fascinating prospect. But again, like I go back to like I hope there's a way to save those franchises. Despite the fact that like they clearly need like a different owner or something.
Yeah.
Somebody else needs to take that over. But like I hope there's a way to save the two franchises, but I guess we'll see what happens. And maybe everybody knows already. And they're just laughing at how completely wrong we are.
Yeah, well, we shall see. We shall see. And while there is no MLR rugby happening until 2023, there is rugby coming up this weekend. So, as we mentioned, the Canada versus the USA, they will, in fact, all the games of the Women Rugby World Cup will be on TSN. But that fixture, Canada versus USA, will be 10:15 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, October the 22nd. If you want to watch any of the remaining Premiership teams as well as the URC, you can watch them on Sportsnet. And at the time of recording, the America's Rugby Trophy has already begun. Chile 15 beat Brazil 15 earlier this week in a very high scoring game. The final score, Brazil 36, Chile 57. And this Friday, Chile will be taking on Canada in the second round of fixtures. However, at the time of recording, there have been no broadcast details revealed. But if you follow our social media channels, we will be able to inform you. That includes Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and all of them are at Rouge Rugby. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast and would like to listen to more, you can do so on Spotify, Anchor FM, and Apple Podcasts. And if you like watching our beautiful faces, including getting some additional footage of interviews with players post games, you can do so on our YouTube channel, again, at Rouge Rugby. Derek, where can the fine people find you?
I'm at Brissette the Jet across all social media platforms, where you can currently find a picture of Eddie Jones wearing a Blue Jays hat for some reason.
It was 8-1.
It was 8-1. It's terrible.
Well, you can find me across all social media platforms at Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. Well, Derek, thank you for joining me as we've just completed the second round of the pool stages of the Rugby World Cup. I'm really excited for that game against the USA. And thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, focusing on real Canadian rugby. We hope you can join us again next time.